Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Moxtober daily recap. For those of you who don't know what Moxtober is, it's essentially an annual event where for each day of the month of October there's a different one-word prompt, and based on that prompt, people make different creative endeavors related to the game of Magic the Gathering. Most people make custom cards, which is what we look at in these recaps, but people also write articles, draw art, make tools, make deck lists, basically anything creative related to the hobby. I'm joined, as always, by Bradley Rose and Mark Confidant, and today's word is orbit. If you want designer credits for all of the cards we talk about today, as well as the full files that we pull these specific designs from, and instructions on how you can get your own cards submitted to those files so we potentially look at them in these recaps, all of that is going to be in the description below. And with that, we can get into our first card of the day, which is going to be from the mtg.design file. It's going to be Interplanar Armillary. This is one of those cards that I've seen Armillary on a bunch of like Magic cards, and I never quite got the pronunciation. So because I've never like heard it said out loud. So, oh wait, this is your card, Mark. Oh, cool. I didn't even notice. Okay, I didn't notice when I put this in my list. Okay, so yeah, I'm just gonna be yoinking yours. So one blue blue artifact at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library in your star chart. You may play cards exiled in your star chart as long as 4 or more card types are in your star chart. I really like this because it's a way you can like essentially create what is a blue Phyrexian arena, but not really have it be that because the card draw is very conditional, and then as you play stuff from your star chart, it goes to your graveyard. Uh, and then so like it's a lot harder than it's not like as soon as you meet the condition, like everything's live in your star chart. You have to like build it up gradually, and then like probably have more cards of a certain type, and then there's like this choice of like, oh, this card is really good, but if I take it out, I'm losing my alignment in the star chart. So this was a mechanic which really caught my eye, um, and it feels like it could really be like the center, like the splash mechanic for a set because uh, there's like so much you can do around it because of how limited it is. You can do like really bomb effects that would otherwise be really bomby or really splashy, in a way that's still controlled and exciting. Um, like I could definitely see like a gifts ungiven variant where 2 go into your graveyard and like 2 go into your star chart for like 1 blue or something, so that you can like really like in constructed you can like set up your star chart relatively trivially, stuff like that. But yeah, this mechanic slaps is basically what I'm saying. It really had me charged up on thinking of like other potential designs you could make with it.
It's funny because like I had a really hard time making a card for this prompt. I just felt like the prompt was really challenging for me. This is what I ended up with as far as things go because like I was trying to think of something like, well, what is orbit? You could have like a super exile zone or something that's like way off out in space. And I think there's like a little bit of that conceptually for some people. Um but I was like this was like me a little bit on my last legs like what do I think would be interesting to do. And I was worried that there wouldn't be enough space. Like in order to do this in multiple other colors, you'd probably have to have like some things care about what's in your star chart or something like that, or just like otherwise the mechanical space can be a little narrow and be a little focused on drawing. Maybe you could have like a rummager that rummages the discard into your star chart or something like that. But
Yeah,
like,
or like you can have like when this creature dies, exile it in your star chart, stuff like that. Like for black, and then
oh
for
yeah,
green, it's like when this enters the battlefield, search your library for 2 land cards. Put one of them into your hand and put one of them into your star chart. Stuff like that.
okay, yeah, yeah. Maybe there is more room. Maybe I was a little sour on it because it was also probably like guessing like 11:30 at night, running up against the deadline. And it's easy to be down on oneself in that sort of setting, I think.
Dude, this one blew me away. I think this is a home run here. When choosing which color, first of all, when choosing which color to go and represent the star chart, blue is a great choice because when you look at what might care about multiple card types, blue and red both have instants and sorceries as like a, oh, we get 2 for 1 kind of freebie there. And then when it comes to artifacts, that's still blue and red. And then when it comes to enchantments between blue and red, blue is more likely to have more enchantments with like capture spheres and all that. But with the set mechanic potential, you could then go, all right, so this can be in blue and red, and then when you look at like cards like in Modern Horizons 2 with green with Storm and stuff, sometimes instants get in there. So and also star chart, like the stars are kind of natural and stuff. So I can see this going at least 3 colors, and it's a very fun deck building puzzle. Got to have all the card types and whatever, and gameplay puzzle because you're like, all right, which one do I play now? Because I know what to play next to keep my star chart alive. So A plus.
Well, thank you.
Okay, now that we've tooted your horn, why don't you toot someone else's? What is your first card of the day going to be?
Um, all right, this might be get me in a little bit of trouble because it's a little bit of a color pie bend, but in the MSC file, Space Explorer I found really interesting, and also just a really great way to grab an amazing keyword. So it's 1 and a white for a 2/1 with Spacewalk. And when it enters the battlefield, if target player controls more lands than you, you can search up a plains and put it into your hand. If not, then that player creates a space token. It's an enchantment land with no mana ability. I feel like it's possible that the reminder text should specify that the enchantment land lacks a mana ability, because I don't think that you assume that in your head just on its face. Um, and the bendy part of this is that I don't think that white gets out and out unblockable. It overlaps on flying with blue, and I think that there's an argument to be made that in terms of like creature keywords, white is no, it's not overwhelmingly heavy overlap with blue, but it does have a fair bit of overlap. So maybe white kind of elbowing into conditional unblockability might be chomping a little bit too much of blue's slice of the pie. I'm not positive on that, but I think that this is like really flavorful and evocative, and I would probably, if I was working for Wizards, argue with the person on the white slice of the Council of Colors about getting away with this.
Yeah, for me, I think it's like White's way of like getting around board stalls is traditionally like it does get flying and like ways to give other creatures flying, but also like you go wide, you have vigilance that you can attack in without risk of being attacked back, and you have lifelink to break stall. So like, I think I really like White's like non-traditional ways to break board stalls as opposed to evasion, and I feel like just giving it straight unblockable or like at least and essentially what is solved unblockable on a single card doesn't super sit right with me. That being said, I think Spacewalk is a fantastic and punny way of doing this keyword, and I love the overall concept. But yeah, I'm definitely
It's
they. I'm amenable to some bends, but I think that this one just doesn't. It doesn't affect the capacity for what white can do in an interesting way, in my opinion.
So this should be a blue white gold card then in your Heart of Hearts.
Or just blue. I could also see like an argument for yeah, it could be blue white or just blue. I think power level wise it could just be blue, but yeah.
I
You're
feel like
talking about the spacewalk part because the planes tutoring might be not be blue, right? Or
Oh
whatever
yeah.
island tutoring is still not blue, so probably
Well,
yeah,
well,
blue
each color
white.
kind of gets like tutoring its own basic to its hand. So the island tutoring an island, it would be fine. But yeah, if it was a blue card, I would definitely say
Okay.
island tutor.
um, I do kind of like the idea conceptually of astronauts being blue white. You know, that whole like, we do not do this because it is easy, but because it is hard, sort of like striving for science in space.
Yeah, yeah. Blue's the best at being technologically advanced, and white is the civilization thing. So it would go and expand naturally. I like space tokens with like the space token itself that was also submitted like I like the choice also to make sure the box was translucent to really show like deliver high impact that this is taking up space on the board. It's just like a vast you can create a vastness if this was a set mechanic. I think this could be a set mechanic. You can get that feeling that there is this endlessness in the sky when you just people accrue space lands, and we can maybe bend this with white if it was a set mechanic where a lot of other cards that interact with space tokens actually do things in a way that makes it feel like white can do this. I don't know, maybe space tokens usually like swap around and stuff, and it's unreliably spacewalking. I'm not sure, but I think the execution of having a space token around to play with is pretty cool.
What's that one green effect that you sack a land and tutor up? I think it's 2 basics and put them on the field. Harrow. Okay,
Harrow,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I feel like that or a functional reprint of that would fit in really well in this set because I think probably if you had space tokens, you would end up with green either getting mileage out of them by granting abilities to them or melting them down. Maybe you'd have some sort of like Urborg effect. I don't know in what color you would put it.
Oh, bring
Maybe
back
in like,
Constellation.
oh yeah, Constellation would be sweet.
Oh my
That's
god.
hell yeah.
We're making a set already now off of this. Okay.
Got there.
But yeah, shout out to Wobbles for this design, and I'm very because I remember like a few episodes ago it was like Wobbles design more cards, and now Wobbles is designing cards, so very happy about that.
Yeah,
Oh
Wobbles is
yeah.
also doing a bunch of stuff on Goblin Artisans. So Wobbles is just a machine cranking out all sorts of stuff right now.
For
Oh
sure,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm dizzy with all the extra games variants. Very cool. Also, I appreciate the CC of base, so who might have been uh, played a part in this design. I didn't catch the thread, but look, maybe base helped iterate this card.
Okay, with that, Bradley, what is your first card of the day going to be?
All right, let's orbit back to mtg.design file and let's go to Grixis Ascendancy. Okay, so here we got an enchantment that has one cheeky reference to 3 different moon cards. The island mode is a reference to Kami of the Crescent Moon, swamp a reference to Bad Moon, and then mountain reference to Blood Moon. Um, okay, so there's a lot of cool things going on here. First of all, the check for the mode keys off of basic lands, which makes your mountain one awesome. It's synergistic with that. That's great. The swamp one lets you have like, hey, I should be more aggressive or beef up if I have lots of creatures. Maybe you try to go for that. And then the island one is a different direction where it's like I just need card advantage. So you might go in that direction. I appreciate that you have choices here. I know maybe in deck building you're like, I don't know if I should go one way or the other, which actually could be a good thing. You have different choices, and like there could be 3 different Grixis Ascendancy decks. And I think green and white are the best at getting like more basic lands. So this is a cool challenge for Grixis to try to achieve.
Yeah, I wonder
I
if it
feel
should be like basic land types among lands you control, so it's a little bit more so that it plays a little bit more nicely with non-basic lands. But yeah, I think overall the design is
Mm.
really cool. I love the idea of stitching together 3 different moon cards. I didn't catch that when looking at this, so that's definitely something I missed about the design. I'm not sure it needs the cascade. It has like enough flexibility that I think it's fine, but yeah, I feel like the
mm.
cascade kind of like pulls away the focus from the rest of the design, and I think the rest of it just stands alone well enough. So there's always a
The
temptation to
challenge,
like add a different like draw card or cascade for that value on enchantments, but you don't really need it when it's a flexible blood moon slash card draw engine depending on the matchup you're in.
the challenging thing about giving it like tracking just basic land types is you end up in, I forget whether it's a layers or dependency problem with the Blood Moon effect and the clause that causes the Blood Moon effect to go into play to like function. So you'd end up with this thing where it might be that the game counts your non-basic land types prior to the Blood Moon happening, and then the Blood Moon strips away those non-basic land types, which would get confusing,
Okay.
Yeah,
especially
that's a,
because
that's
I
a
think,
fair call
yeah.
out.
Um, in general, though, I do like because like Blood Moon is already a deck construction challenge. Being gold adds another layer of deck construction challenge to it. Having most of your lands probably end up being mountains at the end of the day means that the Bad Moon part becomes challenging, and also there's this desire to reach for both the island and mountain part in order to make sure that you can um, have only the Kami of the Crescent Moon draw effect benefit you when your opponent is essentially more often than not drawing duds. So there's like this is pulling you in all sorts of directions deck construction wise for what is like a really powerful rate, but something that's like asking you to juggle between all of these things to reach for. And I like the idea of being really challenged to try and strive for all of them.
Something. Oh, I might add. It's as long as you control more. Maybe it would be cooler if it was more or the same number basic lands. In case you got to race against a deck that has similar colors, like a Rakdos deck. I don't think you'll beat a monocolor deck, which could be fine. But if you're trying to race against Rakdos, maybe it'd be nice if both of you have 2 mountains. And yeah.
Wait, it doesn't count opposing players. It's just it counts internally within yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, I went and misread that. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. That's great. Good. You don't have to get screwed over by um the like, hey, we had the same. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's basically encouraging
that's
you to like fetch, like essentially fetch around which effect you want to trigger or play at the current time, probably.
Yeah,
that's really
Assuming like
interesting
Fabled
too.
Passage style fetches and stuff like that.
exactly.
It's challenging because you're likely to be stuck in the Blood Moon mode eventually. Um, if you get into the Blood Moon mode because you can't fetch your way out of it. So there's this challenging thing where like you want to like ideally I think what you want to do is on your opponent's turn crack fetch for basic island in order to draw yourself off of Kami of the Crescent Moon if you have only non-basics besides that. And then on your turn or no, if you are there's no way to pass yourself. That's actually really interesting because you can't pass yourself on the island mode if you're trying to get it back into Blood Moon mode, for example.
Hmm.
That's
That's true.
compelling.
Oh, that might be a little tweak. Yeah, that might be a little undesired gameplay. But yeah, shout out to WUBRG, who I recognize from Twitter. He's been around since Grave Designer Search 2 type of era. Cool design.
Cool. So an old hand at this. I love to
Yeah.
see people continue to design cards for like, because I feel like there's a lot to. It just shows like how much space there is in Magic when even like the longer you design cards, you're like, man, how did I not think of this idea before? And the reason is just Magic is that kind of game.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think my next design is going to be from the MSC file, and it's going to be pull from orbit. Is that what it is? Oh no. Well, actually, yeah. But I was thinking of a different card, but pull from orbit is also cool. So let's just do pull from orbit now that I've said its name. So it's
All
2
right.
and a green sorcery. Choose one. Destroy target creature with flying, or put target land card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. And I love this as a simple, common way of kind of demonstrating increased gravity. Either it's like pulling down like chunks of like space rock onto the ground, so you're getting more like lands, or obviously it's grounding some flying creature and thereby killing it essentially. It's just a simple evocative effect, and I love how like both modes don't like it could be very easy like uh target creature loses flying or like something like that where it's like fine but it's not really exciting and is has slight functional issues. Here it's just a solid reactive mode, a solid proactive mode, and both in a simple common package. So yeah, big fan.
I feel like the rate on the land ramp mode is a perfectly fine rate for a modal spell because it requires that hoop. If it didn't require that hoop and it just like searched up a land, it'd be a bit weird to just slap on the plummet unless you were like trying to do something to, twiddle a knob in a standard format or something like that. But as is, it's just like very much if you are playing this land ramp deck that cares about like cracking evolving wilds or what have you, then you also get a plummet attached at little extra cost to you. In limited, it's probably more challenging unless like lands in the bin is a pretty common theme in green. But I kind of like that. I like the idea that you don't always want to play this despite that mode being meaningfully useful because you have some deck construction hoops.
Love this combo of both plummet and restore, both of which are cost 2, and you just bump up the generic to have a choose one. Awesome. It's so simple, but the flavor. Yeah, I I want to see this as a real Magic card. I did it.
Mhm. And also, like a little side note is people have designed like a lot of mill cards from Moxtober, and so as I was filling out the common suite, um, I was like, oh, this actually fits perfectly because we have a lot of self mill enablers, um, and so the land card from graveyard onto the battlefield isn't just trinket text or doesn't just require an environment with fetches. It actually works really well in Moxtober Cube proper. So I'm glad that like it ended up working out and slash finding a home there. So shout out to Cord22 for this design. But yeah, what is your next design going to be, Mark?
My next design is Orbital Junkyard from the MSE files. It's an artifact land. It enters the battlefield tapped. You can activate only one ability of Orbital Junkyard during each of your turns. And when an artifact you control with mana value 2 or less dies, exile it. Orbital Junkyard gains its abilities, and it taps for colorless. I think this is maybe a moderate amount dangerous. I wish that the text, and this is a trivial change, um, you may activate only one ability of Orbital Junkyard per turn, would probably be ideally how to do it. Um, but I like that text in general as a way of adding a safety valve to something that's going to gain just a laundry list of abilities. Because usually it's something where like if a thing manages to steal enough abilities from other creatures, it's going to go infinite, or like other permanents. It's just going to go infinite with some random tap ability and untap ability, or like some triggered thing combined with some other thing, and just like become this like kind of morass of random stuff that will go infinite in some way or another. Where on this, that safety valve seems very well designed to me. In the same vein as those triggers only one each turn abilities that they have been doing in Midnight Hunt. Um, and I like the ETB tapped on what is a very powerful rate on a land. And it's possible that this would still end up being problematic, either for being like an artifact land or for copying some random soul ring of yours or some other silly nonsense. But I like where this compels me to go, and I like the safety valves that exist on it.
And I think that being an artifact land is almost also a safety valve in its own right, where it's like, yeah, they can just disenchant your land drop and they've stone rained you. And it's like, well, damn. Well, we've obviously seen that, like, there were environments where artifact lands were definitely a bit much, but I think that contextually, as long as there aren't, like, stuff that counts the number of artifacts you have, or is like, hey, as long as you control an artifact, so and so, um, you can and you can like tailor the environment such that artifact ends up being a meaningful disadvantage rather than solely an advantage.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because like the treasure vault in standard right now, I don't think sees any play at all.
Yeah, yeah. It makes sense to, yeah, like how he was saying, is that uh back then during Darksteel days, it was just a matter of just synergy. It was just, okay, something has to go. The spells or the lands, and they were like, okay, we'll get rid of the lands. So yeah, artifact lands can be okay as long as whatever set this appears in. It's not like, oh, we brought back affinity for artifacts again. You're like, well, we learned that lesson before. Don't do it. Maybe metalcraft, things like that.
Yeah, any sort of like thresholdy mechanic, when you start adding a way to get it for free, it becomes spooky. Um, this thing, I still think there's probably some sort of synergy stuff that ends up being a little bit spooky at least.
Yeah. I love the using egg, like, so artifact goes to the graveyard. It's like, all right, it's trashed, and then you exile it. It like enters as if you probably exile under this land, and then like you feel like they're orbiting around the land. The cards are like physically just around it, and it's just a very cool feeling.
Yeah, so shout out to gynoidpoet for this design. Um, and yeah, Bradley, what is your next design going to be?
Okay, let's go with MSC file, Centrifugal Force. Okay, so this one is very cool. Imagine so when you use inertia and you're swinging your sword so much, and you come back around again and you strike again. What a cool thought for orbit in this case. So a lot of let's see, we got Relentless Assault. Usually costs 2 and 2 red. This is a little more flexible. Actually, it untaps all creatures, allows you to get more bonus. Actually, maybe a little bit beefier, but that's okay. We can change the rate as you need. But I really and this is great. Yeah, you just keep going and then add +2/+0. That's the inertia part, because it comes back even stronger. So I think this is a great simple rare or mythic, I guess in this case.
Yeah, it plays in space that we already know about. It has mechanics as flavor, and it fits this thing of here it comes back around again. It's just really solid. And like you said, probably need to adjust the rate a little bit, but I think lots of times what we've discussed here is that like what matters about a card is not the how it is right now, but if the core concept works, because iteration always exists. So yeah, I'm
Mm.
this is also on my list. I'm a big fan. So shout out to Angel of Grace for this design.
One thing, I think the name might be a reference to, there's an XKCD comic about whether centrifugal force is just centrifugal force, but in a circle. Um, I'll try and find the XKCD comic and link it in the. Wait, does YouTube allow you to do links? I'll try and link it in the comment section, and if YouTube yells at me about a link, then I'll feel sad.
No, yeah, you have to specifically suppress links on your channel, and I don't believe I do that. So you're good.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, there is a tweak that I would maybe make is to make sure that to untap just the attacking creatures. It makes sense for the flavor part, the inertia, that of course they would swing back around.
What about untapping tapped creatures and the creatures untapped this way get +2/+0? So you can like also turn a mana dork sideways and then it gets bigger if you couldn't safely attack in with it. And it blends to that like spinning around.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
+1.
sounds solid.
Like the tapped part is what conveys that, oh, it's as if attacked creatures did it, but instead you're being cheeky and you're like, haha, my Naya deck with full of mana dorks are now attacking you with mana dorks.
Yeah. I I also think just like the visual pun of like super tapping your creatures to the point where they spin around is very amusing to me.
The full
Oh
360
my god.
tap.
Yeah,
Oh my
exactly.
god.
If you
Wow.
don't do that with this card, then you just have no heart.
Super tap a tapped creature you control. Anyway, that's so cool.
Okay, my next card is also from the MSC file. It's going to be Portent of Ascension, designed by Julien. So, I like this card not really for the specific effect it gives, but for the mechanic. Because when I was thinking Orbit, I was like, oh yeah, Rebound. That feels like the natural thing. Like some sort of like spell-based thing that gets you value on your upkeep. And I was surprised by like how few people designed a mechanic like that, but this one did it for me. So the mechanic is Perihelion, where it's essentially suspend, but then you don't get it for free, and you can cast the card, and it happens each time you cast it. So essentially, it keeps coming back around, and if you have the mana to use, you can cast it. Otherwise, it just goes into your graveyard. I kind of think I probably prefer this if this was cast from your hand, exiled with 2 time counters, so it's not like orbiting again and again, because I think that makes it easier to balance slash allows it to go on more designs. But the overall idea, I think, is super solid in a really great mechanical way to represent the concept.
Um, what do you think about? I forget what the name of it is, but there's a custom set that has instead of suspending things, you put them face up as the
You're
like
thinking
nth
of
card.
upload, right? No,
Yeah.
no, never mind. You're not thinking of upload. You're thinking about the nth card in your library. That's
Yep.
like, oh, I forget. That's from Dreamscape. I forget the exact name of it. I just remember it not playing very well, um, just because known information kind of makes is like a little bit like just a sad moment in games in general. It's why like face up counter spells or like face up removal or face up combat tricks are generally avoided if possible. It was also a thing where like the ability to accelerate stuff out by like having draw or just having stuff that would normally be safe, like exiling stuff from the top of your library or milling stuff to accelerate it, ended up being a very hard balancing point, especially in an environment with other cards.
So for that though, it would cast it for free once it reached the top, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there's actually an interesting argument to be made that something like this, if you made it like cast it, you may cast it for that cost if you would like I don't know, if you would draw it or something like that, but rather than like if you cast it for free and then you get to draw the card you like below it or whatever. Um so you can do stuff like for example, no, I don't know. I don't know if I think this is like absolutely perfect, but like using scry to delay it a little further. So like because it's actually an object in your library that you're going to be able to cast for its mana cost, you can procrastinate it a little bit. You can control the tempo of it like a little bit. You have your thumb on the scale just a smidge.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
yeah,
like the
maybe I'm getting in my own head.
no, I like the idea, and I think that making it so that you have to actually cast it makes it a lot more balanced. Yeah, but then I think the yeah, I think it's one of those things where like I'm tentatively optimistic, but I'd have to see on more design slash I'd want to like do some exploratory design with it if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. It's kind of in general these sort of like recurrent casting mechanics are scary on the whole because buyback is utterly terrifying. It basically reads the late game is the same spell a jillion times. The ones that are more cyclical, I think your brain gets less tired of them in part because like there's turns between them happening. And I also think that like putting a real mana rate on this as opposed to like whatever those suspend cards were, the ones that like happen over and over again, um, makes it so that you have a little more of a grasp on what the card is going to be doing.
A something that I love Perihelion for the keyword name just says all you need to know. Perfect, great. It explains why there's a special moment in this orbit of this spell when it comes back around you. Uh,
Wait, actually, for
the
those of us like me who don't know what perihelion means, could you explain it?
Oh yeah, I actually just Googled it before saying this. But it's the point in the orbit of a planet, asteroid, or comet at which it is closest to the sun.
Ooh, that's where we get the heli in there. Cool.
Oh yeah, there you go for the linguists out there. Um, the thing that's weird to me though is that when there are no time counters on it, and you may cast it, and then you still pay the cost. You can decide not to cast it, and then it hangs out for the next upkeep as well. So the next upkeep, you remove a time counter, but there's none. And then if there's none, you may cast it again. So it just stays there. And I wish it just kept going in its orbit around. Like you missed its chance. And so you either have to cast it now or catch the next perihelion cycle. So if you can reword this, that would make me feel a little bit happier. And also, you're not like stacking up perihelions for a while. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're totally right. I misassumed, and I think Caillou also did that. This was going to work the way suspend does, where it's when the last one is removed, but instead it's like it hangs out being ready to cast on any given upkeep as is worded right now. I don't know if that's intentional or if it's just like a misphrasing. Because I thought it worked the way like if you've ever silenced someone with a suspend spell, when the last counter gets removed and they just like sigh, and then it's just in exile as a regular exiled card. But I like the idea of like, um, if there are none, you can cast it. If not, you put the counters on it. I do like the idea of that.
Mm. Oh, that's a clean way to do it. Yeah, you may cast if you don't put. Yeah, I guess it's repeating what it would normally say, right? Because if you cast it, you do exile it with 2 time counters anyway. But yeah, but you may still have to repeat it anyway. You may cast if not put 2 time counters on it.
Yeah, okay. So once again, shout out to Julien for its design. And next up, what is your next card, Mark?
Um, oh yeah, that was yours, right? Not Brad's. Am I losing my rules?
No, that was mine. That was mine. Yeah.
I did
Okay.
mark it down though. This is a good one.
Let's go with the green orbit that Nim designed in the MSD files. So not the orbit, but the orbit. The Nim designed a couple pretty awful puns here, but I like that someone was committed to the bit.
Wait, is it OR bit or orb it?
OR bit.
Yeah.
I just really like the text here, like what it. I'm not sure that it's like perfectly implementable in Black Border because I'm not sure that what happens if, for example, you try and cast an Atraxa with this. Is it that you get to set the cost for Atraxa split as you choose between 2 pairs of hybrid things? So like Atraxa is everything except red, right? So she's white, blue, black, green. So can you like cast her for white blue hybrid and black green hybrid, or cast her for white green hybrid and black blue hybrid if you want? Um, I'm not sure that the rate on this is astounding for its effect, but it's just a very compelling way to change how costs are, and I like it for that.
Yeah, I kind of wish that instead of just saying like 2 different colors, it just said like essentially like it was just like if you would pay a casting cost that cost one or I don't know. I actually don't know how you would word it. I don't know that there is a good way to word this. I feel like this is
Mm.
I feel like it's kind of just I guess it's cleaner as it is where it's just like what do you call it? It has a I feel like this is like a silver border-esque thing where it's like it's best if you just intuit it rather than try to make it work within the rules because it works better intuited or just like let's agree on this than trying to rules lawyer it. But yeah, I like the and I also love that they did their own art. That is very cute.
Yeah.
It has very much playtest card energy to it. I actually have like a like 3 or 4 playtest cards like sitting on my desk right now, so I do stand the playtest cards. Those things are wonderful.
On the art part, it's it's so cute. The like little hey, don't do this type of thing, but do this with the little check mark with an alternate. And they've done the same thing for their other card. Very very funny explanation visually. It's like an IKEA manual maybe to go and do certain things. For trying to make this sure this works in Black Border, I don't get I don't yet have something, but maybe some advice to land on something is look at Niv Mizzet Reborn, who references for each color pair. Now we're still not there yet, but you can also use the technology on some cards that say and so on, right? Like they do for flying and whatever, whatever. So maybe you can kind of combine both those templating stuff, and we can get something working. If this isn't okay currently.
I, I genuinely have no earthly clue whether this is okay or not currently. I think it would be that somewhere in the steps of casting a spell, you would choose the. I forget how it's like
See, this is why we need
how it's
Cajun on
worded.
one of these episodes. Just like the most rules lawyery day, we just bring Cajun on and be like,
Yeah.
okay, tell us for 10 minutes why
Sorry
this
about
works
that.
or doesn't
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
Which this is also
I,
I'm gonna shill Cajun outside of doing amazing work for LackyBot is also uh, the rules lawyer for 2 different custom formats and has made uh, several sets in which there are mind bending rule stuff such as an aura with enchant spell that is essentially a counter spell and some other very wacky stuff. But
Oh
yeah.
man.
Okay, I've looked at the rules and I think I know what would happen here as far as things go. At some point prior to the stage in casting a spell where a player for their hybrid mana symbols announces the non-hybrid equivalent they intend to pay, at some point prior to that stage, they would um, choose the costs that they wish to replace in the spell with hybrid mana costs. So, for example, and I'm assuming that it's supposed to work in the case where you have multiple different multicolor mana costs, you would say, okay, I want to replace the red and white mana symbols in this with two red white mana symbols in the costs that are required to be paid. And then after that, I'm going to replace the green and black mana symbols in this with green black hybrid mana symbols in the costs that are required to be paid. Then you would go to the stage where you say, okay, now in the monocolor or in the hybrid mana symbols, I'm going to state what I intend to pay as far as monocolored costs for them go. So I'm going to pay this with white, white, black, black. Does that make sense? No? Good.
Ah, yes. I totally understood. Didn't understand anything.
Head empty, ready for next card.
Mm. Oh
I
yeah.
also love
Speaking of next. Oh yeah. No, never mind. Sorry.
the art has an orbit in it. It's like no and bit, use an orbit instead. It's really, really great that they did the logic gates there. That's wonderful.
Oh yeah. My little programmer heart appreciated that. But yeah. Okay. Now actual transition. Speaking of moving on to next card, Bradley, what do you got for us?
Okay. mtg.design file. We're going with, what was the name? Oh, yes, it is the Heron Moon. Uh, let's see here. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on here, but there's a lot of clever things going on here, I believe. So, um, first of all, we have the card that exists in Magic, Imprisoned in the Moon. It's a story spotlight that put Emrakul into the moon. That shows that. But what the game effect of that card was gave the whoever got the enchanted thing, it turns it into a tap for colorless. So this is like a reference to that. This is the moon itself, and then of course using tribal on a non-creature because the moon isn't a creature right now, I guess, but it still references that Emrakul is inside of it. So you're able to do Tribal Eldrazi. Awesome. And then, yeah, it makes sense now that this moon being Eldraziified, you can now use that mana to go and cast your terrifying Eldrazi spells. And of course, also colorless creature spells is a reference to Eldrazi, but you can also extend it to your deck full of artifact creatures that are colorless and stuff. Annihilator counter. That's a cool reward, I guess, for having this type of mana rock. It is kind of a like you only get one mana, but I mean Annihilator is destroys permanents, so that could be a nice balancing thing there.
Yeah, I know that I spoke up against leyline effects in a previous episode, but hear me out. We give this the leyline text. Oh wait, no, you can't do that. No, I was gonna be like, you give this a leyline text, and then we just have a handful
Mm.
of ornithopters or memnites. But you can't. But they don't cost anything. You can't pay mana into them. This is so tragic.
Aha.
Okay, Dream Crutch. You could probably still get what is the little pest thing that has zero power but has battle cry? Yeah, we'll just throw that one in instead.
There you go.
Once,
Oh, geez. Yeah, you're trying to. Yep. Or like Memnite. Oh no, you can't. Oh yeah, you're right. You're right.
yeah,
You
you
can't
just like
spend on Memnite. Yeah.
you signal pest or not vault scourge because it costs Phyrexian mana. Bomat courier is evil. That's just cruel.
Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
that's perfect. Yes, Bomet Courier. Go, go, go.
Yeah. Or gingerbread man.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
Haste Annihilator. There you go.
Yeah.
Turn 4, Annihilate.
I am slightly sad that this doesn't work with the flip Eldrazi from Eldritch Moon. Like you can't cast a Docent of Perfection and have it get the Annihilator counter when it becomes final iteration, which is a little bit tragic.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think
I'm not sure
the
if like Annihilator counter is the best payoff, but like I think it's one of those like things where it's at the level where it doesn't really matter. It's evocative enough that like it's like, yeah, this checks the flavor box TM TM.
yeah.
Would you say? I guess it has to say Annihilator 1 counter on it, but maybe we can update the comprehensive rules. If it doesn't have a number, it's Annihilator 1.
Yeah, that seems a fairly easy tweak.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Is there anything else we have to
thanks,
say about this card?
UnbanTwin. Yeah.
Yes, thanks, UnbanTwin.
A little messaging there. Very nice.
Mhm. Okay, so my next card is going to be from the MSC file, and it's going to be, what is the name of this card? I've forgotten it like 3 times. Catching the Moment. There we go. Designed by iemcd, Ian. So this is, again, notice a pattern. I love the simple cards in life. It's 1 blue sorcery, draw 2 cards and put a card from your hand into your library second from the top. And I love the idea of like it's again like it kind of gets back around to what you were mentioning, Mark, where it's like putting cards into your library to represent it orbiting back to you. This kind of does that in like a brainstorm-esque way. Um, and yeah, this just feels like everything from the choice of art to the effect to the flavor, just feels like a really comprehensive package that is a simple functional effect that also captures what orbiting is all about in a magic way. So yeah, big ups.
This reminds me kind of I'm forgetting the name of the effect, but there's a card in Eternal that's a sort of brainstorm variant, and the reason why it exists is because Eternal has some cards that have draw triggers on them. So, for example, there are cards that when you draw them, you create a duplicate of them. So you can draw one of those and then brainstorm it back in order to be able to draw it again to get an additional duplicate. Um, I feel like Magic, sadly, is like a paper card game, doesn't have the capacity to do stuff like that without like miracle triggers or things like that that they're a little bit fiddly. Um, but I like this as like a quote unquote fixed brainstorm, and I also like the second from top, um, just because it gives you the ability to kind of control the timing a little bit. If this was instant, even if it had to be a 3 mana instant, it would make a lot more sense to have second from the top specifically to avoid drawing back the thing immediately on your turn if you cast it on end step. But as is, I definitely don't mind giving yourself, like when you cast this on turn 2, a little bit extra of a timing window to fiddle with the top, and whether it be through a scry or through cracking a evolving wilds or what have you.
Yeah, for sure.
Very clean execution. I don't have much further to add, which is one of the that's a really good yeah, it's just praise for this card. Great.
I just think it's neat.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, what is your next card?
Let's go to mtg.design Terok Nor, Embassy of Peace. It's 9 mana for a legendary artifact vehicle. It has Convoke. Creatures can attack you or planeswalkers you control if their controller controls a human. Crew 6, and when it attacks humans you control, gain +1/+1 until end of turn. I just like the idea of doing like a top down. I believe this is the satellite from Deep Space Nine, although I could easily be wrong on that. I'll admit to not.
It says Roddenberry as the artist credit, so it probably has some Star Trek relation.
If people in the comments get livid at me not knowing my Star Trek deep lore, they can come beat me up
I
or
just
whatever they.
I just did a Google Star Trek.
Yeah,
Is
I love
it
the
so? Is it
concept
Deep
of like
Space Nine specifically?
What's that?
Is it Deep Space Nine specifically that it's from, or am I losing my marbles?
Oh wait, do they both have a Terok? There is a
No,
Deep
no.
Space Nine actually. Yeah.
Deep Space Nine is a subset of Star Trek. It's like this run where
Oh,
like
see,
okay.
you can yell at me now, everybody.
yeah.
I know less about Star Trek.
This was a big brain. This was a big brain move to draw the heat away from Mark. But yeah,
Yes.
I have we seen a Convoke vehicle yet? I think that that's a really good way to like Crew already obviously conveys that feeling of like a bunch of people coming together to like build something, but I think that like having the double whammy like has both interesting flavor and play implications. Um, I think that I don't like the random human hosing thing. Like there's like I'm not sure that I'm on board with the rest of the text of this card, but as a convoke uh, uh, vehicle that represents kind of this unity space in Star Trek, I'm a fan of it. Yeah, the human thing also feels like a little weird because maybe I don't know much about like Deep Space Nine, but isn't like the whole thing of like Star Trek like the whole Federation of Galaxies coming together to bring sentient species together? It feels weird to call out humans specifically as a result.
Yeah, I like the idea of a top-down satellite a lot more than I like the specific implementation because um like specifically in Star Trek it is like very multicultural or very multicultural. So maybe like a convoke where you can only convoke creatures of different creature types or something like that, or maybe it has like some sort of what's it called, like a propaganda effect where creatures it costs mana to attack you for the different number of creature types that you have, something like that. And there's also a little bit of weird timing with crewing this thing then having it attack when the crew is a smaller number, like the creatures crewing are weaker than they would be after the attack trigger buffs them. um, there's a couple things that like don't
Mm.
work perfectly, but I like the idea of like rewarding your like little Federation guys for building this big spaceship and protecting you a little bit by having this like representation of kind of neutrality. I'm also not super sold on like um this being straight up colorless. I'm not positive on that though, because like obviously you can convoke out colored mana even, but like um I don't know. I'm torn on like the specifics of things. I feel like there's a lot of knobs in general in vehicles, and specifically like a convoke vehicle that's going to be a big thing with a high crew cost has a lot of additional knobs on it. So I'm not sure where you'd end up with that like final iteration of this, but before then, I feel like this is a rough pass, but it's a rough pass that deserves like at least some commendation for being like a real like a heartfelt attempt at a top down design. So shout out to ThatOneFallenAngel on this front.
My my favorite part is the convoke part, or even if we go with um, another iteration or another alternate path of unkeywording and making it so that you tap one of each with a different type if you want to go that flavor. I want to see in Magic in the future of some huge vehicle that houses things inside of it, a lot of people inside of it that has convoke, or even I just gotten excited of like assembling a Megazord with improvise, and you tap your different little vehicles and make the big vehicle. Yeah,
Oh, like vehicle improvise.
yeah. I think improvise says your artifacts can help tap to help pay for this. So if you like go and what do you call it? You can still just tap your all your different 5 different vehicles of the Megazord, the smaller ones, to cast a bigger one.
Maybe something with like vehicles tap for extra mana equal to their power or something like that for the improvising of it.
Oh, there we go. Well, I guess we might as well do a sub. What do you call it? A sub convo sometime about that. But yes, very exciting stuff.
Speaking of exciting stuff, what is your next card going to be?
Oh gosh. All right, so let's go on over to MSE. Let's go to. Let me get the name right here. Sorry. There we go. Okay. All right. Laser satellite. Okay. Laser satellite has this orbit mechanic, which I think is neat. Okay. So, uh, sending things into space takes time. Sometimes you got to hit launch, and that's what orbit enables you to do. This specific execution is really cool because even if it's out in orbit, lasers still work when you're going around and you're shooting things, which is awesome. But I like that in this case, you are not sad to cause your like if you're to play with other orbits, and then you put laser satellite back out of orbit, you still are getting a little reward. You're mitigating not being able to keep shooting things while it's out in space. So it deals the damage when it comes back out of orbit. So that's a really cool gameplay here, and I want to be able to solve a puzzle with a bunch of different orbits.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a mechanic that like is interesting as like essentially like you get to slow flicker. You get repeated slow flickers, but you can control it because it's only stuff in your orbit. So you can make them like very low value impact on ETB, but make them value engines that can like get out of control if you just if you like reorbit them again and again. Um, and you need at least two to like pull off the orbit shenanigans. So um,
I
I think.
feel like.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say like this feels like another mechanic which I would really want like not exploratory design because I feel like the space is there, but I feel like a lot of like playtesting to see if it actually comes through. Because I feel like sometimes the play pattern of just looping two different orbiters will not actually be that compelling. But I think that as an attempt to do a permanent based orbit mechanic, it is probably the one of the more compelling ones that I saw.
I think that what I might like from the orbit text, just as like a tester, would be you may exile any number of permanents with orbit you control, and then return one other, and then return one card you put in orbit to the battlefield. So like things will hang out in space for a lot longer, and then they will make a landing for a brief amount of time. You might need to adjust the rate on this somewhat in order to make that happen, but it keeps from something where it's just like, okay, um, every other turn I am pinging for one, and in the turns where I'm not pinging for one, I'm playing like an orbital lander that makes like a 1/1 or something. So like stop the cyclicality of it quite so much, but like you end up with some cards in exile that have enchantment like effects, and then you bring one down at the beginning of each of your turns or something like that. And that one stays down for a while and then goes back up. But most of them end up in exile for a span of time. I don't know.
No, that makes sense. I can definitely see that as a variant of it. But yeah, shout out to Cajun for this design. And with that, we're getting into about time, so we're gonna have one last round. And then after this somewhat lightning round, I have one special card I'd like to show off. Um, but yeah, so let's just do that. So my last quote unquote card is going to be from the MSC file. It's Laruli Meteor Master, designed by LuckyLooter, and I'm mainly here for the lands you control have lifelink. Um, and whenever a land enters a battlefield under your control, it deals 2 damage to any target. Um, and I think that this could very easily have been like Landfall. Whenever a land enters a battlefield under your control, Lerouli deals 2 damage to any target, and you gain 2 life. But I think that this is kind of like a demonstration of how to grant additional flexibility to your cards by giving the lands lifelink, by letting them deal damage. You can do like weird and interesting stuff, and it signposts something cool about the format. Um, either they're like manlands or like yeah, basically I think it mainly works with like manlands and stuff. Um, where obviously those are not going to be at like a high density in most environments, but when it does come up, it makes it so that you feel smart for drafting both of them and like having that synergy in your deck. And I think that's just a fun lesson for cards where it's like if they aren't already very pushed, giving them more potential for synergy is not something that can hurt or is something that you should do first, test it, and then if it is a problem, change it. But yeah, always striving for more synergies is a good thing. TM.
I also think the thing that it's granting is like not something that puts the fear of God in you as far as things go. Like you aren't thinking, oh, if my lands get lifelink, some crazy like outside of context synergy that I can't think of is going to happen. Um, and it's also just super evocative. A, for like a red white commander, and then B, just the idea of like an astronaut riding a meteor down and like throwing it at somebody, like something out of I don't I'm blanking off the top of my head, but like just like sending a meteor at you and like glassing like the whole place where you're at is just sweet as hell.
This card is so cool for like it gets me excited for commander stuff. Yes, the playing a lot of different lands that animate into creatures is cool for the lifelink part. For the landfall part, white lately has been in of course with like land tax and all that, likes to get a bunch of planes in hand, and this gives you a really cool payoff for just like, oh yeah, I'm not fetching like you all are green and stuff, but at least with this deck, I can still keep going pew pew pew.
Do you guys feel like 2 damage is the ideal amount here as far as things go? I'm
Yeah,
torn as to like,
I feel like helixing could become a little bit problematic if it's like if you have fetches. I think 2 damage is like a good rate where it's like if you're hitting your land drops, you're like there's like a good life swing here, um, without it being like too oppressive to like mid-sized creatures, etc., etc.
yeah, I was torn on whether it's like 2 definitely feels like the threshold where it's like blow up a real creature. 3 starts to get into like blow up a real creature that your opponent paid some serious mana for, most likely. Where like 2 mana, you're likely killing a 2 mana dork, or maybe like a Bob, or depending on what your commander environment is like, there will be something that like you're not sad at all to just huck a land at.
Mm.
For sure.
I like that how you pointed out the fetch part. I think if you pretend that you have a bunch of those crack get a land stuff, so you can assume each turn you can do 4 damage. I think that's good to make sure to avoid killing their Sun Titan. Um, if it's at 3, but if maybe reward you with like you do manage to hit landfall 3 times in a turn, okay, you get the 6 damage divided as you choose in twos.
Yeah.
It also gets kind of cute with like bounce lands, etc. Um,
Oh, bounce lands. There we
mhm.
go. We're building the deck.
Bounce lands plus terrain generator plus something to
Myriad
untap on
Link.
your opponent's turns.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, what is your last card going to be?
Well, speaking of land, in the MSC file, there's a card that's Arthrolura Colossus Haven. It's a land with the subtype planet. For 1 and tap it, you add a colorless and a green. And for 1 and a green, tap it. Target creature you control enters Arthroluria's orbit. If it was already in orbit, it exits its previous orbit. Attacking causes a creature to exit orbit at end of turn. Creatures in Arthroluria's orbit get +2/+2. So like it's essentially you can keep it perpetually buff on defense, or have this be kind of a um, giant growth effect on uh, your creature. I think there might be a need to make it activate only as a sorcery, otherwise things get a little bit messy. Because it's you can attack in with something, buff it, and then it's unclear whether having already attacked with it causes it to leave at end of turn, whether it's like a state trigger that checks if a thing attacked at the end of the turn, or whether it's a delayed trigger set up by attacking. Regardless, though, I think this is really evocative. I think it's great that both the tap ability implies bigness in that it's kind of hard to tap because it costs mana, but it taps for more, and also makes it not strictly better than a basic land. So there's just like a lot of really nice things that are going on here that both capture the planet feel and have like a keen sense of what a good utility land looks like.
Hmm. Yeah, I I think that like probably I agree with the sorcery speed rider. I think probably for a repeatable effect on a land could probably adjust the costing, but I think the general concept is pretty cool, and it makes me interested in seeing how orbit focused is this environment slash can we have orbit on stuff that isn't land so that there's like more like design space etc for it. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, uh, shout out to C2H6 for this design.
I could imagine like a horrendously expensive to crew vehicle that you could put creatures into orbit of it and they crew as though they were more powerful if they're in its orbit.
That makes sense, though I do think that maybe becomes a little less interesting because then there's no incentive to attack if we're going to keep that
Hmm.
part of the mechanic.
Yeah, that's
I li-
fair.
I like the idea of creatures having these different sort of anthems or different what would normally be affecting all your creatures on the battlefield, but it's divided based on the concept of orbits. You're like, oh, okay, no, we're on the same team, but I'm on this planet, you're on that planet. Yeah, we're each having our own thing right now. I think that's really cool.
Okay, and with that, Bradley, what is your last card of the day going to be?
All right. So for this one, let's go to mtg.design. The card is called High Ranking Turncoat. Okay. All right. So this one goes with the concept of orbit in that you are passing a card around the table. If you were to imagine a commander game, then it feels very circular. All right. So creatures you control get +2/+2. That's huge. You don't see that stuff unless you got like the anthem that gives artifact creatures +2/+2. You might know the name of that. That's a famous one. Oh yeah, it's something of steel. But
Tempered steel, I think.
yeah, yeah. Exactly, yeah. But you get a buff here because you have to like help the next opponent or whatever afterward, but it slowly becomes something different over time. Now, this might be a little like I would maybe make this multicolor instead of white. But if it had to stay white, it might tweak it a little bit. But I like the fact that you can spread around the love, but it's diminishing over time to enough where it eventually goes away because it has 3 toughness and it gives your creatures -1/-1, so it will eventually die. But it's tough enough so that when it comes back to you, like the what do you call it? What comes around goes around, as they might say. You'll still experience a minus by the time it gets back to you. I think it's what -2/-2. It's like 2/1/0/1. Yeah, you'll get -2/-2 on your turn when in a 4-player commander game.
Yeah,
How
it's
do you
an
feel?
interesting play pattern. I don't know if I vibe with the exact implementation, but I like the idea of like uh, it reminds me kind of like how Doomed played as Hot Potato, and maybe like is there a way to make kind of like a one card Hot Potato that like plays interestingly? And I think that this is, if not getting there, is close to the idea of what that would look like.
How do you feel about the
Yeah.
lack of control of who it goes to? Because like, there's a little bit of interestingness to being like, well, I don't get a say in who it's going to do its biggest debuff on. Um, and otherwise, it might be a little bit lame because each player would just like give the +2/+2, or give the +1/+1 to whomever has the least creatures, and then they would probably give the +0/+0 to whoever they wanted at the wheel when it comes to the next ability resolving. As is, the fact that like you don't get a say in who it is a little bit interesting. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's another way to do it that would be as interesting as just it goes in turn order no matter what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I might remove the camp block part. It feels unnecessary. Like it doesn't feel like you'll have it uh and still have like I don't think it comes up. And I also may make this white black just to make sure the minus part still feels right.
Okay, and with that, we're going to be getting my little self-indulgent special card at the end. Um,
Let's do it.
so yeah, give me a second to pull it up for y'all. I think I have it in the file. But this is, I guess, my little advertisement for Molde Cube, which is another event that's being run at the same time as, or I guess in the same month through the month of October. It's an event over on the Custom Magic server where essentially it's a community-made cube with a science-y flavor to celebrate the wacky holiday of Mole Day, which is a real holiday on 1023 because the mole is a number 10 to the 23rd power. So the card I'll be showing off for Orbit today is one that was designed for last year's Mole Day cube, and it's Voyager, Farflung, and Voyager Home at Last. So let's just drop it in here. Boom, there you go. So it starts off as a legendary artifact where you can essentially use it as a repeated draw engine. But at a certain point, once you've drawn enough cards with it, it turns into a planeswalker. And essentially a flexible one that essentially you upgrade its card draw into tutoring with the artifacts. It can do a little Vindicate as a treat, and you can also get an emblem that copies artifacts you control. I think more than specific implementation, I just love the idea of a character who is a living satellite. I think that's a really cute idea. And I think it fits this thing of Orbit, where you do this repeated thing, and then finally, once you've like completed enough rotations, you kind of like fall back into Orbit once you've like found home. So yeah.
Yeah. I also love this little planeswalker. Very cute. I imagine, let's make the plushies of this one. This one's maybe gonna beat out Fibblethip. Okay, and those are maybe bold claims. I don't know. This is nice. I'm not the gold token. I'm trying to see where. Oh, I see. This is the ultimate here. Can create 2 tokens. So it's very, very clever, very good solution there for at least having something that you can ultimate on if you have nothing else. Besides, you can also just search for artifact cards.
I really like the idea of just like exploration here of like your journey is done once you've got enough information and you get to the point where you are um like a planeswalker. Like the whole idea of flipwalkers progressing into like, I don't know, your final form or what have you is just kind of satisfying to me.
Yeah,
Like
so
a Wally thing.
oh yeah, for sure. It is very Wally. But yeah, shout out to Ivy for this design, and yeah, come participate in Mole Day Cube alongside Moxtober. If you've been enjoying Moxtober, I think they both have this very similar feel of like community-driven events where you make cards to like fill certain prompts and work together with other people. So yeah, they, I just remembered this little guy, and I was like, hey, cross promotion, let's do it. Um, but with that, we're actually at the end of today's episode. So once again, thanks to Bradley and Mark for joining me. And thanks to Cajun and Ancestral for setting up LackeyBot to MSC conversion and MTG.design, respectively. Without those collection services, we wouldn't be able to do these episodes. If you're curious about what the heck I'm talking about, you can find the full MTG.design and MSC files in the description, as well as how you can submit your own cards to be in them and potentially featured in these episodes. We also have full designer credits in the description as well. But yeah, other than that, we'll loop back around and see you tomorrow. Until then, bye.